Well, welcome, friends, to another episode of what we're calling Unprecedented Times. It's not that funny, is it? Many of us are still recovering from the last unprecedented thing that happened to us, the COVID-19 epidemic, that cost many lives, that changed our lives and our institutions. But here we are, having just inaugurated a president who seeks more to tear down the government than to run it, and one who has issued executive orders that are actively hostile to many of the values that are the articulation of our faith. Values like justice, equity, pluralism, and generosity. I admit to you that there are moments when I feel inadequate to the task of being your minister in these unprecedented times. How can I bring a word of hope to you in times that feel hopeless? I was talking to my husband, Joe, about this, and well, bless his heart, he gets to hear me process a lot of things out loud. And he said to me, "Oh, sounds like you're daunted." And that's a bit of marital shorthand for us because we're both drawn to and inspired by a bit of wisdom from the Talmud that says, "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it." You're not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. That gives me hope. It's a reminder that my job as a loving person is not bigger than I can handle. My job is, to paraphrase Methodist theologian John Wesley, to do all the good I can, by all the means I can, in all the ways I can, in all the places I can, with all the people I can, as long as I ever can. In other words, we're not supposed to stay stuck in hopelessness. Don't spend your time doom scrolling on social media or seeking out the latest outrage, but instead, do all the good you can. Do something, because that doing is not just the right thing to do, but it's also one of the best ways to create more hope. Action breeds hope, which breeds more action. Your action doesn't have to be a big one to get started. This week, when I was feeling a little hopeless, I ordered a t-shirt, and it says on it in huge letters, "Do not obey in advance." It's the first instruction from a book called On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder about resisting authoritarianism. To feed my hope, I also checked out websites of organizations who are and have been fighting white supremacy and authoritarianism and oppression, to learn from them and start to discern my role in the movement. Websites like Waging Nonviolence, it's a good one to check out. Standing Up for Racial Justice, which is an organization for white people to organize for justice. And the Poor People's Campaign, which works for economic justice. I also sent some money to the ACLU because they're going to need it with all the lawsuits that have been or will be filed to challenge the constitutionality of some of this week's executive orders. Each small action served to give me a little bit more hope, and that hope inspired me to do the next thing, and on and on. It's a virtuous cycle. At this moment, I don't know exactly what my role or our role in the resistance will be beyond what we do now. But I am listening and watching for opportunities, and I hope you are too, and I hope you'll share them with me when you find them. If your hopelessness has you feeling stuck, like your small actions won't make a difference, I hope you'll remember the poetic truth from today's reading. You must not believe the lying lie that you do not matter, that whatever change you can organize is so insufficient as to not be worth your time, your energy, or your life force. You must be willing to dream a dream that carries forward your community. This is how we rise. dreaming a dream and taking action. This is worth our time. In a congregation, the mission and the vision are the articulation of this dream that carries our community forward. We say every Sunday that we dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, and we attempt to live it out throughout the week. In this new world, in this unprecedented time, we may need to adjust how we live our mission in the world. Whatever comes next may call for something different from us, and we need to talk together about what that might look like. And so, here's an opportunity to do just that. Next week, whether you've been here a long time or you're a brand new visitor, you are invited to stay after coffee hour for a light lunch, and then we'll have the opportunity to talk in small groups about how you think we as a congregation are doing, living our mission, and then we'll explore ideas for how we could live into our mission more and in better ways given the changing circumstances. If you won't be here in person on Sunday, there's an opportunity to join an online group on the next Tuesday evening. Same ideas, same small groups, same questions. These events are both an assessment of where we are and a time to dream of what we could do. We'll explore what is possible for this small group of liberals with their fists raised here on the prairie. I want you to start thinking about it now. A good question to start with is, what are our assets? I don't mean just the money in the trust, although that's one of our assets. What do we have that we could use to build the world we dream about? When I think about this, I think of our building, a large parking lot, the people here. We have a communication structure. We have a grounding in faith that will help. The second question is, what are the needs in our community? Do you want to say some of those out loud? Housing. I'll repeat them if you say them. Food insecurity. Health. Transportation. Reproductive care, reproductive justice, yes. Yeah. And finally, the last question is, what are the things that we, with these assets, and given that these are some of the issues in our community, what are the things that we are uniquely situated to offer? We don't want to duplicate what someone else is already doing if we have the tools and the people and the desire to take another action. And as you're thinking about it, I want you to think big and I want you to think small. And here's what I mean by that. These problems are huge. Poverty, housing, food insecurity, these are huge. So just because it's huge doesn't mean we need to discount it, but we also need to focus in on the small things that are ours to do. We don't want to just throw up our hands like, oh, it's too hard, we can't do that. Instead of thinking it's impossible, ask, what is our small part in solving this big problem? And while we're thinking of that, we also need to keep in mind that part of our mission is to care for one another, our community, and our earth. And I think living this part of our mission well is just as important as those justice-focused parts. Even as we're living through huge moments of political upheaval that cause distress and endanger people, those people near and among us also are having very personal crises. Diagnosis of cancer or a car crash or a relationship rupture, that's all still happening. We can provide a refuge and a sanctuary for people who are hurting. In these unprecedented times, some of us might be called upon to do big things, to speak before large crowds, to sign on to a lawsuit, but most of us will not. And part of what we can do is sit with those who are hurting, bring a meal, offer refuge, listen. And the reason for that is because the way we will get through this is together. Will you say that with me? The way we will get through this is together. As Reverend Sean Dennison wrote in the poem you heard, we have to give up the counterfeit currency of self-sufficiency. Under the weight of destruction, we will need the strong shelter of forgiveness and the deeper wells that give the sweet water of welcome, saying, we have a place for you here. This process and our ongoing work in the world can be our response to the beautiful and courageous plea that the Right Reverend Marianne Budde, Episcopal Bishop of Washington, spoke aloud a couple of days ago. It sounds like some of you have heard that. Yeah, she's my new Rev crush. Yes. It was at a prayer service as part of the inauguration weekend. She named those who are feeling afraid right now, people from the queer community and immigrants especially, and pleaded with the president to show mercy on them in the name of a loving God. She closed her sermon with these words that, although they were directed at those in power in Washington, apply to us as well. She prayed, may God grant us the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and to walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people in this nation and in the world. Amen and amen.